The moment when the sky cried was the moment when the world seemed to stop breathing for a while. Everything turned still and silent, as if even the wind forgot how to move. She stood near the old wooden window, her eyes fixed on the endless horizon that was slowly drowning into shades of gray. The clouds hung low, heavy with tears waiting for permission to fall. She could feel the weight of that sky in her chest, like a secret too old to carry but too painful to forget. The air smelled of memories, of long-lost voices, of laughter that had faded into whispers, and of promises that never found a home. Her fingers trembled as she touched the cold glass, tracing the tiny drops that began to slide down. It was as if the sky had finally decided to let go, and in that moment she too wanted to let go of everything that had been chained inside her heart for too long. The street outside was empty. The old trees bent low as if listening to the sorrow of the clouds. The world below reflected the pain of the heavens, and in that reflection she saw herself. She remembered how he used to tell her that rain was the way the sky healed itself, that maybe tears were not weakness but a form of release, and yet when he left she forgot how to cry. She only remembered how to wait. The waiting became her habit, like breathing without meaning. Every drop that now touched the earth carried the rhythm of her memories, his laughter, his scent, his silence, his goodbye. She wanted to scream, but the rain spoke louder than her voice could ever reach. The walls of her room were covered with the echoes of her past, small frames of photographs slightly tilted, holding faces that no longer looked the same. Her reflection in the mirror had changed too. Her eyes were deeper, quieter, holding storms instead of dreams. She walked slowly to the table where an old book lay open, untouched for months. The ink had faded, but the words still burned. She ran her hand over them, feeling the warmth of what used to be. It was a letter written by him, not to be sent, not to be read, just written to exist, like a piece of heart left behind. It spoke of love, of fear, of time, and how both could never be trusted. She folded it again and placed it close to her chest. The paper was fragile like her, but it still held meaning. Outside, thunder rolled softly like a distant memory. Waking up, she could almost hear his voice between the sounds of rain, telling her that every storm ends, but she knew not all storms do. Some just change shape. They live inside people, disguised as smiles and soft words. She took a deep breath, walked toward the door, and stepped outside, letting the cold drops fall freely on her skin. It was like being touched by forgotten hands, like being forgiven by something she could never see. The street glimmered in silver, the world washed anew, and yet nothing felt new. She closed her eyes and whispered his name, not for him to hear but for the sky to carry. Each step she took was heavy yet freeing. She walked to the place where they once met, the small bridge near the river, now shivering under the rain. The water below danced restlessly, mirroring the chaos in her heart. She stood there, remembering the first time he had held her hand, the warmth that had erased her fears, the way his eyes had promised forever without saying a word. She wondered if forever was just another word people invented to comfort themselves, because forever had ended and all that remained was this endless rain. She lifted her face toward the sky, letting it cry on her behalf. Her tears mixed with it until she could not tell which was hers and which belonged to the heavens. The city around her seemed asleep, but she could feel its heartbeat in the sound of footsteps that were not hers, in the faint flicker of streetlights fighting against the darkness, in the smell of wet earth. Rising like an old lullaby, she sat on the edge of the bridge, her dress soaked, her hair clinging to her skin, and for the first time in years she felt alive, not happy, not healed, just alive, because sometimes that was enough. She whispered to the rain as if it were listening, telling it stories she never told anyone, telling it about the dreams that faded before morning, about the promises that broke without noise, about the love that still lived even when its name had turned to silence. And the rain kept falling as if answering her with compassion. Somewhere far away, lightning drew lines across the clouds. For a moment the sky lit up, revealing her face glowing with the reflection of pain and peace. Together she smiled softly, almost like forgiveness. She knew the world would forget this moment, that tomorrow the sun would rise and people would move on, but the sky would remember, because it had cried with her, it had witnessed her truth, it had carried her sorrow and washed it away drop by drop until she could finally breathe again. Night grew deeper, the rain softened into a gentle rhythm like a lullaby sung by the earth to the broken hearts that could not find sleep. She kept walking, her shoes sinking in puddles, her shadow stretching and shrinking beneath the dim streetlights. She did not know where her feet were taking her, but she did not stop, because stopping meant remembering too much, and remembering meant hurting again. The world around her blurred into shapes of silver and gray, the scent of wet leaves mixed with the faint aroma of forgotten flowers blooming somewhere unseen. She thought of him again, of how he once said that rain carries secrets between worlds. Maybe tonight her pain was being whispered to the stars above. She reached the old park where the swings swayed slightly with the wind, the place where once laughter had filled the air, where he had pushed her gently, promising that he would never let go, but he did not keep that promise. She walked to the same swing and touched its cold chain. It was wet and trembling under her fingers. She sat down slowly, feeling the weight of the years that had passed since she last sat there. She pushed herself lightly back and forth, the motion slow, steady, almost healing. She closed her eyes and imagined him sitting beside her, smiling the way he used to when the world still made sense. The rain began to fade into a soft drizzle, and in that quietness she could hear the echo of her heart beating steady and tired. She realized how long she had been carrying the silence, how it had become her companion and her curse. She whispered softly into the air, asking nothing but still hoping someone or something might hear. She spoke of love that never died, of letters that were never sent, of mornings that never came. She spoke of herself, of the girl she once was, who believed in forever, and the woman she had become, who understood that forever could live inside a single moment. As she spoke, the clouds above parted just a little and the moon peeked through, pale and uncertain. Its light fell over her like a tender hand, and she felt warmth again, not from the world but from within, the warmth of acceptance, the quiet understanding that pain too is a form of love. She looked up and smiled through her tears. The sky no longer wept, it simply watched her gently, as if proud of her courage to stand beneath its sorrow and not break. She took off the ring he had given her years ago, the one she had never dared to remove. She placed it on the swing seat beside her and whispered goodbye, not in anger, not in grief, but in gratitude. The wind picked up slightly, carrying her words away into the night. She stood and began walking once more, this time her steps lighter, her breath calmer, the city lights reflected in her eyes like tiny stars. She passed by the coffee shop that had once been theirs, now closed and quiet. She could almost see them through the window, their hands touching across the table, the way time had stood still for them, for that single heartbeat. She smiled again because she knew memories do not vanish, they simply change their shape. They live in raindrops, in reflections, in soft songs playing far away. She reached home at dawn. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried its sweetness. She opened the window and let the cool breeze in. It touched her face like a blessing. She looked at the empty chair near the window where he used to sit reading quietly while she watched him from afar. She no longer felt the ache she once did. Instead, there was a calm acceptance that some people are meant to be memories, not destinies. She lay down on the couch, her eyes heavy with sleepless peace, and as she drifted between dreams and waking, she thought she heard his voice again, faint and kind, telling her that the sky cries only for those who still know how to feel. In her dream she was standing in a vast field under a golden sky. The air was warm and light, the clouds soft like silk. He was there not as he was but as he should have been, calm, gentle, free. He reached for her hand and said nothing because nothing was needed. They stood together in silence as the sun began to rise, and when she looked up she saw the same rain, but this time it was not sad, it was beautiful, each drop shining like hope, falling not to mourn but to renew. She understood then that pain had never been her enemy, it had been her teacher, showing her what love truly meant, beyond promises, beyond forever. The morning light slowly crept into her room, waking her softly. She opened her eyes, and for the first time in years her pillow was dry. She got up, walked to the window again, and smiled at the sky that was now washed clean. The clouds had drifted away, leaving behind endless blue. It was as if the world had forgiven itself, and so had she. The morning stretched wide and quiet, the world glimmered as if newly born. Drops of rain still clung to every leaf, shimmering like tiny memories refusing to fade. She stepped outside barefoot, her feet touching the cool earth, feeling the pulse of life beneath her. She walked slowly through the garden, breathing in the scent of wet soil and wild jasmine. The air was fresh like forgiveness. She closed her eyes for a moment and listened. The birds were singing softly, hesitant at first, then stronger, as if they too had found their courage after the storm. She felt something within her shift. The heavy silence that had lived inside her for years began to melt away like snow in the sunlight. She wandered to the path that led to the small hill behind her home, the place she had avoided for so long because it reminded her of him. They had once climbed it together, laughing, breathless, young, believing that love could outrun time. Now she climbed again, alone but not lonely. Each step she took felt lighter, as though the earth itself was lifting her. She reached the top and sat there, watching the world below washed clean by the night that had wept. She could see rooftops, glistening rivers winding like ribbons, and far away the bridge where she had stood in the rain. It all seemed distant now, like a story that belonged to someone else. A soft breeze brushed her face, carrying with it the faint scent of roses. She smiled, remembering how he used to bring her one every time they met, saying that even the thorns protect beauty. She understood now that pain too had protected her. It had shaped her, it had taught her to see beyond endings. She took a small piece of paper from her pocket. On it she had written only one line. She read it aloud softly to the open sky, saying that love does not die, it transforms into something the heart can hold without breaking. She folded the paper carefully and let it fly with the wind, watching it dance away into the endless blue. The sun climbed higher, its light golden and kind. It touched her face like a promise of better days. She thought of all the people who carry their own storms unseen behind their smiles, and she wished for them what the rain had given her: the courage to release, the strength to endure, the grace to begin again. She realized that maybe that was the true meaning of the moment when the sky cried. It was not sorrow but renewal, not an ending but a quiet beginning. She felt tears gather again, but these were different, soft, warm, filled with peace. They fell freely, blending with the light until they disappeared. She walked down the hill slowly, each step steady, each breath full of calm. She passed the old bridge again and stopped for a moment to look at the water below. It was no longer wild but gentle, moving with quiet rhythm. She dropped a small stone into it and watched the ripples spread wide, touching both sides of the river. She smiled because she knew that was how love worked. It never vanished, it only moved outward, changing shapes, finding new homes. She whispered thank you, not to anyone in particular but to everything: the rain, the sky, the silence, the pain, all of it had brought her here. As the day went on, she opened the windows wide, letting sunlight flood her home. The photographs on the wall seemed brighter, their faces alive again. She did not turn them away this time. She looked at them and smiled because she could finally remember without hurting. She brewed herself a cup of tea, the steam curling like tiny clouds. She sat by the window and watched the world moving, people walking, children laughing, life continuing as it always had. But now it felt different, now it felt right. Evening came slowly, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. She stepped outside one last time. The air was calm, the ground soft beneath her feet. She looked up at the heavens, now calm and clear. She whispered softly into the fading light, telling the sky that she understood its tears and that she too had learned to cry when it was time and to stop when the heart was ready. The wind moved gently through her hair, carrying her words upward, and she felt a quiet connection, a bond between her and the sky. Both of them had cried, both had healed. As darkness settled, stars began to appear one by one, small silent witnesses to her story. She lay down on the grass watching them shimmer. They looked like drops of rain frozen in the heavens. She breathed deeply, feeling her heart slow and steady within her chest, no longer heavy, just full of quiet warmth. She closed her eyes and smiled because she finally knew that love never truly leaves. It only changes its form, sometimes into rain, sometimes into stars, sometimes into peace. And so beneath the vast endless sky she rested, her heart calm, her soul free, knowing that when the sky cried it was not just mourning, it was reminding her that even after the darkest storm beauty still returns, that every tear carries the seed of light, and that even broken hearts can bloom again.